Anita, and I welcome you back to Women in Marketing presented by CMO First. Here we sit down with inspiring women marketers, not just to talk shop, but to celebrate their journeys, their thinking, and the spark they bring to this ever-evolving world of marketing. If you joined us for our first journey, thank you for being a part of this series. And if this is your first time tuning in, you've picked a great moment, because today we're rolling out episode 5. Our 5th edition is a special one, and I'm genuinely excited about our guest today. Joining us is Michelle Lira, a marketing powerhouse with over 15 years of experience across industries, continents, and some incredible roles. Michelle is currently a global client director at Dentsu B2B, where she works at the intersection of strategy, creativity, and business growth in the world of B2B marketing. What makes her journey fascinating is how diverse and intentional it's been. She began her career in the fashion industry, moved through travel, film, and advertising, and before stepping into B2B, she also served as the president of the New York chapter of the US National Committee for UN Women, the United Nations entity dedicated to gender equality and women's empowerment. What an amazing woman to have on our podcast, and truly embodies exactly what we want to do here, which is highlight women in marketing that are making changes. That's Michelle, guys. And today we'll be talking about her career pivots, global perspectives, leadership, and what it really takes to thrive in this ever-evolving world of marketing. It's great to have you with us, Michelle. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Vita. I love the idea of this podcast. And as you briefly touched on my gender equity work, it's really important, I think, to hear from a diverse set of voices, particularly women's voices, so we can learn and support one another. So I'm really excited to be here today.
We are equally as excited to have you here. And as you said, it's so amazing to give women this platform because we all have so much to talk about and so many different perspectives. So it's great to be able to share that. So without any further ado, I'm going to get on to the questions. So Michelle, I'd love to start with something simple yet personal. And this is a question I ask all my guests. What first drew you into the world of marketing? Was it a planned path or something you found along the way?
I actually never imagined myself in marketing, and quite frankly, I didn't actually understand what it was. Like, when you think about especially being Asian, think about being a doctor, being a lawyer, those are kind of tangible, like, oh, I know what you do. But marketing was just like this gray, thing that I was just like, okay, I have no idea what that is. But when I decided that fashion, where I started my career, was better as a passion than a career, I just fell into it. I started off at an indie New York City-based media agency, and it specialized in luxury and fashion brands and premium audiences. So that crossover into B2B, and it kind of hooked me. What I didn't understand at the time was that with my studies in consumer behavior economics and studying abroad in Paris, where one of my classes was fashion trend forecasting, I already was kind of in the realm of like what I do now, which is like to understand people's behaviors and what connects them with brands.
Wow. That is an amazing journey, Michelle, honestly. I definitely didn't know that about you either. I know we've had conversations before, so that just blew me away. So yeah, what a journey. And definitely, going from something like fashion, but the way you transitioned into the agency world was almost fashion related. So it was actually still relatable to what you were in, but just more exposed to the marketing side of things. So it was a good transition that you had, I think, rather than, some people, they go from, one thing to the next. But I do love the fact that you mentioned the whole, being Asian thing, and becoming the typical stereotypical doctor, lawyer, or engineer, and accountant maybe, and or a pharmacist, yeah, anything, optometrist, exactly. All of those, career paths that our parents think are valid career paths. And then you tell them that you're in marketing or sales, and they almost think, oh my God, what happened? Where did we go wrong? But yeah, no, explaining that to them obviously would have been quite the task. But yeah, no, I love the fact that you even mentioned that, because a lot of people don't, and it's true. It's not the conventional path that Asian families would choose for their kids, I guess. So you've actually seen both sides of the Atlantic. How different does work feel from New York compared to London?
It's like saying, comparing an apple to an orange. They're really that different. obviously both speak English languages. They're globally renowned for being cultural and financial hubs. They're known for being like cosmopolitan and what have you, but they're just very distinct, especially because of, I guess, the different like American versus British, not even the work styles, but like the bedrock of our cultures, where I think in America, you live to work. Your identity is is wrapped around your job and your career progression, and that's like who you are. It defines you. And so much goes into that. Um and then I think the UK is a bit more like Europe, where it's like you can be ambitious, but for also a lot of people, for some people it helps pays the bills. It's like it's something you're really interested in, or you studied, or you fell into, but it's not like you kind of give yourself to it in the way that I think Americans do. And then I think there are just things around, how you network. So in America, everybody goes to networking drinks either through their university alumni association, or the industry bodies hosting things, etc. Whereas, and I think the idea of networking here in the UK is more subtle, more, who like through families or friends, and one-on-one conversations going for coffee, rather than these like big, like kind of small talk events.
It's actually very true. I mean, you're right. Even though the cities look very similar, like to me, Manhattan and London are very similar cities. There's concrete jungle, right, as they call them. But the mentality and the thought processes behind it, and the fact that Americans are very career driven, I'd say 90% of their makeup is career. And you're right, absolutely. You nailed it. I've got cousins in the US, and they are very much workaholics, and they can't imagine life like the way we live it here, where we've kind of got a very good work-life balance, but also our core identity isn't made up of our careers and what we do for a living. As you said, most people just look at it as, I'm doing this because I need to pay my bills, right? Rather than it's 90% of who I am. But yeah, that's an interesting perspective, definitely. So you were exposed to paid marketing first in 2008, which feels almost like a different world now. Looking back, what feels completely different today?
I think, well, one, there was much more of, I mean, print was still huge then. I remember, especially in fashion, you're thinking about, like making sure you are in certain magazines, and that if you're a perfume brand, you have those perfume inserts, etc. So everything has shifted so much more digital. Everything, there's been a lot more consolidation of media brands. And yeah, I just think that, for better for worse, I think everybody was so excited about, you know, digital advertising and these tech companies, and particularly where we're seeing quite a few, I would say, press about algorithms and mental health safety, or how were we protecting children, etc. You didn't have to think about it back then, because you just kind of thought like, oh, these companies are going to take care of us, or it was just in your mind. And now looking back, you're just like, wow, we probably gave too much faith into some of these like companies. But I think it's just, I would say those are probably the two biggest things: more print, and or now less print, more print then, and significantly more digital.
Yeah, definitely. The digital era has definitely taken over. And I remember the times when everything was very paper based as well, in my sales function as well. So there was back in the day, people used to use the yellow pages to do cold calling. I mean, I can't believe I still remember that. I'm obviously giving away my age there a little bit. Accidentally, not purposely. And yeah, so yeah, definitely the digital era has changed things massively, I'd say. And like you said, a lot of these companies and the way they position themselves now is so different, isn't it? It's a completely different way of doing things. Even with AI and intent and all of that stuff coming through as well, I think it's only going to get more and more digitalized now.
And I think even the KPIs, right? Because I mean, I was around when, you know, I helped our team, or I helped Hennessy at LVMH achieve their first 1 million followers on Facebook, and and like that was their thing, is like you were buying to add followers or fans, or you were, those were, or you were, everything was like CPC or cost per fan, or et cetera. Now it's just all about like engagement or reach. I mean, it's just so much more advanced than it was, and how digital was used is still completely
Yeah,
different too.
definitely. There's also more GDPR and regulations in place now as well. And then the cookie apocalypse that's supposedly happening. So there's a lot of red tape around how marketing is done as well, like data protection and stuff like that. So paid marketing has changed through that as well, I'd say, because of the regulations that have come into play too. So one thing, Michelle, about the world of B2B marketing that you don't like and hope it vanishes soon.
Oh, where do I start? There's actually a lot.
Oh my God, I thought you were going to say
I think
papers, like
no, there's
it's gone.
there's probably too much. I think there are, on one hand, too many companies that are just buying data. I mean, so let's talk about, like lead gen companies. I think we definitely need them. But I think because the margins are so good from a company perspective to just buy data and then resell it, there's I think almost too many, not too many cooks in the kitchen, but there's too many companies just buying data. So there's tons of data redundancy, record duplication, all that kind of like what's going on with that in that data world. And so I would really like to see less of that. Um,
So
and then I
basically,
think
basically, Michelle wants some lead generation companies to vanish.
not all, just some.
Not
And
all, just
then
some.
I think there's also I think the current, when you think about like the pipeline and like MQLs, buying like MQLs versus SQLs, etc. I think that like that's how not marketers, but like I guess marketing people who are driven by being like under the gun of having to justify their budget, you know, that's how the world has come to decide, like this is how we're going to prove our budget or etc. But it's not how people actually behave, like the amount of times that you get feedback that our sales team contacted that person like 3 times, and it's just like, well, because that you that person could be sales ready, but also it doesn't work to just call them 3 times. Like, who wants to pick up a call, especially if it doesn't have like, or email, like, but particularly call if it doesn't have like what the business name, or like if I don't recognize a number, even when it's a personal friend, I don't pick up. So why am I going to do that for a company? So there's just these like very human behaviors that aren't considered into the whole lead scoring rules and how we behave from both a marketing and sales perspective. Um, I also wish we could get rid of the bias around less touch attribution, because let's face it, that doesn't work. Um, and then I think when we think about the mechanism, the value exchange behind, leads and everything, it's kind of based on these like white papers or PDFs. But I mean, that I don't necessarily think that, like, does that work? As someone who has downloaded it, yeah, I'll read like some of it, but sometimes I want it to be interactive. So why is everything, why can't it be more interactive? Why haven't we been able to figure that out yet? That, if we can get it interactive and figure out and learn from that, then those can also feed into, some of your lead scoring criteria. What help build a more robust idea of what people or what your audience or buying audience actually wants or needs, so that way you can actually deliver that to them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that that's true because the white paper downloads and everything else, that's all great. But, how much interaction have they actually had with the content itself? As you said, that it could be that they've downloaded it and not really read it, or only read a snippet of it and not really understood, the value prop that the client's trying to put out there. So having something a little bit more interactive, because I know that they're starting to do that and release that with some of the programmatic display ads as well, where you can actually go on and speak to a chatbot during the clicking of the ads and stuff. So it is a little bit more like back and forth, where it asks some questions and you have to answer questions back. So, maybe it's something that will slowly move into the, content syndication world of like when you're syndicating digital assets like one pages and infographics and white paper downloads and things like that. Because I think that's a very good idea. I do think that it would definitely increase propensity to buy and, also people to actually engage and have conversations with, the end client sales teams as well.
Yeah. Oh, also probably one more I'd like to get rid of. Sorry, I just thought
You
of
did say you had a
is
list.
the
I was prepared.
is the idea that, um how do I put this? It's the idea of like, I just don't think that there's enough content that's necessarily the right content. There's a lot of a bit generic content, and I understand a lot of it's budget constraints because, you don't want to create one thing that then isolates another buying audience or another industry or whatever. But I feel like everything is, there's a lot of content, but it's either too generic and not personalized enough, or it's so personalized, but it's so data heavy that it can be also intimidating. So there, I think we haven't really nailed the appropriate level and amount of content yet.
And actually, coming from your perspective, because you have had quite a lot of exposure to very different sort of industries and backgrounds, I think one thing that you did mention at the beginning was, you're very interested in how to speak to the end customer, how to design that messaging, and, what's going to resonate, and how, you can do that with evolving times and the world changing so much around you. And I feel like, as you said, there's a stagnancy almost, isn't it, with the content now? It's like we have to put this content out. We know we have to write about our products, but how do we position it for like the C-suite versus the manager level? And then it gets a bit more complex because when they're trying to do persona-based content, then it kind of loses some of its appeal as well. So yeah, absolutely agree with you on that one because content is king, right? As they say, and data is queen. So if the content isn't great, then yeah, it's the data could be amazing as well. But if the content doesn't land, then you're kind of going to see the same issue arising over and over again. Because then what you're doing is you've got, like you said, the data is already diluted because of so much data being purchased everywhere and the same data kind of circulating in the industry. But then you've also got the issue of content not being relevant or landing in correctly with the audience. So yeah, you combine those two and then,
Yeah. Like from a B2C perspective, we've been able to manage to figure out, gosh, can I put a string of sentence together? But we've been able to personalize, maybe it's not the right kind of personalization, but we've been able to figure out and provide some like personalized buying journeys. And I think, considering the world of B2B has kind of had a head start of on some of, I would say, more of the digital world, because we've had to function more digitally than B2C. And then B2C is kind of catching up to be more B2B, or to be more B2B digitally. And yet they've not, I mean, again, it's not everyone's doing it right. And and there's still a lot more that needs to be done. But buying journeys, they've managed to catch up in buying journeys in one way or another. And we're still trying to crack that code, and I don't know why. Um, but I'm confident we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few guests on here that have said that B2C is a little bit more fun and they're a little bit more risk taking when it comes to their content. And I think that's because of the audience, right? They're going out to a much broader audience. So I guess they have a bit more, room to do that. Whereas B2B is a little bit more, a little bit less, I'd say, fun.
But then I just don't understand why we can't A/B test, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And A/B testing is so important. And I think maybe that's where the changes need to be made in the content. Maybe the content needs to start taking a leaf out of the B2C book and just kind of being a little bit more out there and more fun and more like, like lighter with their messaging. And it probably will resonate because, the people buying are still humans, right? They're still consumers. It's just that they're wearing a business hat when they're looking at it rather than I'm on my day off on the weekend with my kids' hat or whatever. So it's still the same human you're interacting with, and that on a human level doesn't change, I think. So, if it lands on B2C, I reckon it would still be the same with B2B content as well. So maybe they just need to inject a bit more fun around the content.
Well, if you also think about it, like the majority of business decision makers are also now millennials. So they're expecting the same experience from their B2B journeys that they do of their B2C. Like for them, that world, there was never a shift. Like they entered the world like that. So yeah, the B2B companies need to catch up a bit.
Oh my God, absolutely nailed it when you said the millennials don't like that. There's a millennial too, and yes, I'm totally with you on that one. So I wonder how that's going to differentiate with the Gen Z guys then.
Oh yeah, I mean, my team made me feel old already when they told me like, "Oh, we don't use WhatsApp to communicate. We use Snapchat." And I'm like, because I was like trying to create like a WhatsApp work group and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, I had to download it just for you because or just for you. Well, not like just for you, but like I only talked to my like parents on this and now I'm using it for work." And I'm like, "Oh my God."
Oh my God, I didn't even know this. This is news to me because my kids use that, but I'm like, I've never thought of it as any kind of like internal communication platform. It's always been WhatsApp, really. So yes, I'm still very much a millennial. I haven't moved into the Gen Z Snapchat world yet. Thank God for that. I don't know how I'd handle that one, to be honest.
I definitely wouldn't handle it well.
Yeah, exactly. So B2B marketers today have more tools and platforms and dashboards than ever before. And we were just talking about tools, right? Communication tools. So this is a good question. Yet many teams still struggle to generate meaningful demand, right? So do you actually think the industry has become too tool-led and automation-led than human-led when it comes to lead generation? Or do you think that it's fine as it is? The tools are necessary.
I think I think it's a bit of both. I think it's like we do need tools to help us so that way the human let me take a step back. The human part is so important because you know what you've just said earlier, at the end of the day, we're not just B2B people, we're also B2C. Like we want that human interaction. You know, if I don't know if you've seen, there's like some stat that, people are actually like trying to move away from like being so connected to their like phone. There's so many apps now that kind of trying to help you disconnect from your phone and have those human experiences. And just I think last night or yesterday or something, like Tim Cook of Apple was encouraging people like get away from your phones, be more in nature. So, we are humans at the end of the day. We are meant to be in communities and have that human experience. So when you have that human experience of, a salesperson reaching out, etc., to connect you to the brand, to make sure your experience is great, that is obviously really good in terms of finding a way to connect someone to your brand, making sure that, they have the information they need to be on the short list. I don't know many people who call a customer service line and want to hear to an automated voice. Everybody always does like, the 000 or star or whatever to bypass it, to get to a human as fast as possible. So the human part is super is necessary, but it's also more labor intensive. It is more expensive. Like all those things that help, with a company's bottom line. It's just you can't have too much of it. There has to be what is the reason for that human experience? How do we use that, etc. But also the same for tools. What is the reason for that tool? How is it going to help us? And there are I think there are things that help us be more efficient, but I'm not sure if they are more effective. And one example of that is going back to the whole lead scoring idea is that we when we have when we take that into account, we're looking at an individual person, but we all know that what goes into a buying committee, like what goes into decision, is a buying committee. So how are we looking at the account? What tools do we have to actually look at the account and figure out what that account needs versus not needs, et cetera. Like we're still very much on the individual person level. And so I think the tools are good, but I think there needs to be more to add that human element of like, okay, how do we then connect it? And of course, then that's where I guess the ERPs and the big data, like all come in to help connect that data. And now I guess the use of AI agents that can help connect that data, but also that's on the premise of, is your data good and clean? So your tools, again, thinking about what are we using them for and what is the best way to use it, it can only be as good as the data that sits behind it. So if your data isn't good and if it's not done in a meaningful way that understands the customer, understands like the human element of it, then it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, no, it's actually, you're so right. It is actually the data that's going in that's going to determine the data coming out. And some of the tools, I'm sure you've got clients where they've got a massive tech stack and a lot of it's very siloed. None of it's really speaking to each other as well. I've found that several times with my clients as well. So, whether it's marketing automation platform, CRM system integrations, a lot more things are integrated and automated rather than the manual uploads, which is good. Like you said, it's more efficient that way, but efficiency doesn't always translate in, what did you say earlier?
Efficacy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And that's I think that's the struggle with a lot of tools at the moment is how do you get them to interconnect and almost provide one holistic view of everything and all the data that sits within your ecosystem. Again, a difficult task though, because you've got so many new tools coming out all the time and those tools need upgrading as well. Software upgrades mean, they're no longer compatible with something else. So that's always the challenge that I think a lot of people find when they've got a lot of tools and tech and, things like that and dashboards everywhere.
Well, I mean, and I think to your point about the whole like siloed, it's because for some data, certain parts of data or whatever can sit in the marketing function. For some, it can sit in, you know, the digital function, which can sit outside of marketing, or it could sit under a tech function, or, so they're never, they won't be able to connect and so it will be siloed. And I think that's where it's really interesting to see where the role or the shape of marketing is shifting, where marketing isn't just necessarily about either brand anymore or, you know, um, product, etc. Like more and more, I guess, marketers and CMOs are seeing that, digital, AI, all of that is now sitting in their remit. So it's becoming quite complex in our marketing space as well.
That's so true. So I wanted to ask you, what actually drew you personally into the agency world and what has actually kept you there?
I think the pace is like, if I'm a very curious person, and I like kind of knowing things. So I think there's the pace of across different industries, you're just kind of having to you're learning new things about the industry. You're learning new things about um, the industry, sorry, by industry, I mean the industry of which your client sits in, or you're learning things about the client. So you're just kind of learning a lot. And then on top of that, the industry itself is so quickly changing. I mean, like we talked about, I started in 2008. There's tons, so much has happened since then. So constantly learning. And so um, it's kind of like a bit of adrenaline junkie where you just kind of get stuck in and you're just kind of absorbing all these little bits of information that um, it's really fun to learn and just kind of feel like you're always experiencing and learning something new versus I think there's so many times where I'm like, oh, can I keep up with this? Am I like I'm so tired all the time. but but could I actually when I try to imagine myself like moving out of it and like slowing down, I'm like, could I do that? Would I want that? So because yeah, I think I'm
It's tough when you've been in that environment where it's fast paced and knowledge coming at you all the time. I think slowing down would probably
yeah.
make you almost feel like a vegetable, right? In mentally.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, I mean, I know when I had my kids and I went on maternity leave, I was itching to get back to work because I just started to feel a little bit like, oh, wow, okay, I need to go back to work so I can just be exposed to stuff again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I felt very similarly. So, yeah, I think it's really what's keeping me in the industry for better or for worse.
And I agree with you on that. It's actually what's kept me in the industry. The same reason is that my clients are all from different verticals, industries, and I've got to learn so much across the 2 decades that I've been in lead generation. So obviously it was called lead generation before, now it's called demand generation, and then you've got ABM and all these other fancy things. But this is all the evolution of like the space that you are in, and even with programmatic display and learning about these type of things as well was such a game changer because, it's just, I love knowing about my clients' industries before I even speak to them because I want to know everything I need to know to make sure that we can deliver the best possible campaign and results. So knowing, not just their industry, but what their challenges are and how they go about, like marketing to their end users and clients is so important to that journey. So yeah, I know about so many industries now. So when I meet people that are, working in cybersecurity or finance or, whatever they work in, I'm pretty sure I've had a client in that industry, so I can actually speak on it with confidence. And I think even they're like, oh, how do you know that? And I just like, oh.
Yeah, it's really fun kind of just sometimes just throwing out random bits of information. I'm like, oh, I feel so
I know,
knowledgeable.
right? That's exactly how I feel when people like go, "Oh, how did you know that?" And it's like, "Oh, yes, I just worked with a client." Um, you know. So we've got one more question, Michelle, and then we're going to move on to the rapid fire round. So we're gonna end this with a good one. I know you're going to love this question. So when you look at how much the marketing landscape has changed in the last decade or so, one noticeable shift has actually been the increasing presence of women in the field of marketing. Compared to when you started, we're seeing more and more women stepping in and really excelling. What do you think the women are doing particularly well in marketing today versus maybe 10 years ago?
Right. So I think there's two parts. I think one is the environment of which women are in, and I'll start with that. And then I think it's the women themselves. So the environment is there's just been a lot of change. So one, there's a lot more efforts around closing the wage gap between men and women. So whether that is through equity, uh, policies at companies, whether that's through mentorship at companies, whether that's women seeing other women and using them as like mentors to help them in the industry. I think there's just a lot more in the environment for women, marketing and otherwise, that's enabling women to excel in their careers regardless of being in marketing. In particular in marketing, I think that and this might seem quite biased, but I think every woman will like nod their head and be like, yeah, like we are more emotionally intelligent. and so and so with marketing being a bit more um of a, I guess I hate to say this because I feel like it sounds like it's fluffy and it's not like hard hitting or whatever, but it's a bit more of a like culture people kind of centered role. And so you have to want to understand people. You have to want to understand like what is the thing we need to do. And I just and it's a very multitasking role. And again, women are just better at that. So I think it plays to our natural strengths in ways that it doesn't necessarily for men. And there I said
Yeah, you said it, girl. I love that you said that. And you are right. I mean, we've got, I'm sure you have, and I have as well, had men internally champion us to kind of, come out of our shell maybe, or even go for that promotion, or give us the platform for our voices to be heard internally as well, right? And showcase the talents that we can actually bring to the table. And I think that's also very important.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to the rapid fire, and this was going to be a really quick one. It's going to be more fun and a little bit less of, the questions and answers. It's just 2 mini rapid fire segments, no overthinking, just your instinct. So I'm going to say a word or phrase, and you just say the first thing that comes to your mind, Michelle. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go then. First one for you is intent signals.
Yes.
Love it. Multilingual campaigns.
Needed.
SEO is dead.
No way.
A/B tests. This one's for you.
Necessary.
Lead quality complaints.
Annoying.
Yes, absolutely. I'm with you on that one too. Oh, good. Some of the complaints are absolutely random as well. I love those answers. Now we're going to switch gears real quick for 2 rounds. This or that, right? So I'm going to just say 2 words and you just have to pick your preference. Zoom info or Apollo?
Zoom info.
Bant or waterfall?
Waterfall.
ABM or ABX?
ABX.
Carousel or videos?
Videos.
And the last one, Chat GPT or Gemini?
Gemini.
Ooh, really?
Oh, well, it's more, I mean, it's a bit more, it's because of the politics.
That's a really good reason, by the way. And I love that you said that because it shows that, you're paying attention to the world and everything that's in it. Yep, love it. That was super fun. And thank you so much for playing along, Michelle. It was an amazing conversation and I absolutely loved having you with us today. Thank you for your insights, all the knowledge sharing and, just sharing your absolutely phenomenal journey with us. It's been such a great pleasure to have you with us today. And here's me, Kavita, signing off until next time. We'll see you soon, guys. Bye.